Hi, this is Rebecca Fallon with the Sotiel Center for Resilience, and I'm here to talk about some aspects related to creating a positive emotional workplace. So thank you to First Health and the leadership at First Health and the foundation specifically for supporting the creation of these modules for you guys. So when we talk about having a positive culture at work, a positive emotional workplace, what we're really getting at is, what does it feel like to be at work every day? Which emotions are you allowed to even bring into the workplace? And which emotions are you either subtly or overtly recommended to keep in the trunk of your car? Or, we don't do that here. We don't talk about that here. All of these things are hints about what the emotional culture is at your workplace. And your answers to these questions are likely to predict much about your well-being. The truth is, how we get along with each other or don't get along with each other is a powerful correlate with both professional and personal resilience. Resilience is all about relationships. You may have heard that over and over again. And relationships both at work and at home will predict our ability to stay resilient, particularly through times of extreme stress. So we know that the quality of work relationships is definitely predictive of personal well-being. We also know that having a positive emotional culture at work yields better outcomes. It gives us more of what we want: better employee retention and employee satisfaction, higher ratings of customer satisfaction, in this case, patients and families. And so all of these things correlate with the vibe of the team, essentially. So it's absolutely important to spend some time thinking about, are we doing all we can do to create a positive workplace culture? Now, we also know, and we have talked about in other sessions, how your family's support for the work that you do is vitally important, particularly for folks who work in medicine. And the biggest predictor of whether your family will be supportive of your work is not how much money you make or how many hours a week you have to work. It is your mood when you come home from work. And what we also know is that right now, we are in the long, slow drone of this new normal, this COVID landscape, and that people's moods are absolutely affected, and that showing up as our best selves in the workplace may be particularly challenging right now. So just like in relationships, working on how we work together as a team is not a one-off conversation. This is something that we need to be doing again and again. These are conversations we need to be having repeatedly, particularly as we navigate this crisis, and showing up with courage and with authenticity and a willingness to hold each other and ourselves accountable for the role that we play in creating culture. One of the most vital variables to a positive, compassionate workplace culture is we want people to have psychological safety. So we know that there are no perfect people, there are no perfect teams, and therefore there needs to be space for mistakes. People need to feel safe to say, I don't know how to do that, or I don't understand why we're doing this. Can you help me? Can you help me understand this? People also need to be safe enough to take interpersonal risks within their team, to admit errors, to accept responsibility for mistakes. So psychological safety is hugely important for collaborative teamwork and subsequently quality of outputs, which is obviously what we all want. So that's sort of our goal throughout this, is to create a culture that does feel psychologically safe. Now, when we talk about culture, I think an important distinction is culture is not like our mission statement. It's not what we aspire to be one day. Culture is right now, today. What are the things we say to each other? What do we say about the place where we work? How do we treat each other? What types of things do we tolerate, even if we say maybe that we don't tolerate them? Those are all things that are really indicative of the true culture. And some of this involves taking responsibility for what you are bringing to the table. We all know that emotions and attitudes are contagious. Think about the people that you love working with, the ones when you know you're going to work with them, you get excited, you feel calm, you feel happy. Those people typically have very positive energy, or they are good communicators, they're good listeners. They bring a positive attitude to the space, and it's absolutely contagious. We've all felt that. The flip side of that coin is that we've all felt how contagious a negative attitude is as well. Those folks who are pessimistic, cynical, that inevitably trickles down to affect everybody else. So I think right now, more than ever, it's important to pay attention to and really take responsibility for the energy that you are bringing into the room. Kind of pause, check in with yourself, understand your words matter, your energy matters. It's all very contagious. And we all have a responsibility to manage that better, particularly during this long, stressful period of time. So, what are the biggest threats to a positive culture? Well, the umbrella of disruptive behavior is certainly one that has expanded in recent years. You know, we've kind of expanded our definition of what is considered disruptive or distressing behavior. Basically, disruptive behavior is any action that increases apprehension or anxiety with colleagues and subsequently is going to negatively affect people's ability to focus, the communication of the team, and the effectiveness of the team. So this really could encompass a broad range of behaviors, distressing behaviors. We've kind of, again, expanded the definition of what's unacceptable. But again, it's going to increase anxiety. When we get anxious or apprehensive, inevitably, we become less emotionally intelligent, right? So it's going to cause folks to lose focus, not communicate as well, and therefore the team is not functioning effectively. Particularly in healthcare, you know, I think there's a lot of work to be done here in terms of driving accountability for the impact that our behaviors have on each other. In our time since COVID began in March, we have done probably 60 plus virtual presentations for healthcare organizations around the country. And one of the things that's coming to light is a new type of distressing behavior folks are reporting in light of COVID. So again, a distressing behavior is one that feels threatening, right? It creates apprehension or anxiety. We are hearing over and over again from people, I'm distressed that I am going to great lengths with masking and social distancing and paying attention to what I do outside of work in order to keep myself safe. And I don't feel like my colleagues are doing the same, or there are a few colleagues who are clearly in violation of what the rules are. And this feels distressing to me. It feels not only psychologically threatening, but also physically threatening. Now, this is not a political statement about what we should be doing in light of COVID, but it is important to acknowledge this is going to affect culture. The way that a team responds to and respects or disrespects what the rules are around this absolutely is going to have an effect on culture. So as teams, we need to be deciding what our norms are, get everybody on board, and leaders need to be consistently communicating what the norms and expectations are. That is going to continue to be very important going forward. Now, as with everything that we talk about with resilience, we can look at what other people are doing as an issue, but we also have to own and take responsibility for the part that we are playing. Sometimes we may be actively engaging in distressing behavior, in behavior that is causing concern for other people, but very often we are more passive participants. So I encourage you to think about this as well. Are there situations that you are just perpetuating? What are you doing to passively perpetuate a negative culture? Are you engaging in gossip or even just listening to gossip or encouraging it? Maybe you are ignoring inappropriate things that happen or things that are detrimental to the culture, just letting stuff happen. So passivity is a real poison in terms of creating a positive culture as well. And we know that a lot of the real threats to culture and teamwork are not always very visible actions. If we look at the research, specifically in the field of nursing, what we call lateral violence, which is injustices committed, kind of laterally. What are those things? Well, it's things like undermining somebody or withholding information that would help them, scapegoating someone behind their back, backstabbing, that type of thing. There's a lot of that goes on, and it is really worth evaluating yourself and being honest about how much of that am I participating in or just passively allowing to happen. So it's really easy for us to list all the things we shouldn't do, but let's talk a little bit about what we can proactively do to correct course. Because again, there are no perfect teams. All of us have to reevaluate and correct course at some point. The truth is, in creating culture, there are a few behaviors that can drive a whole lot of change. So, as with resilience, we're going to talk about even if they are 90% of the problem, even if other people are creating 90% of the distress, let's identify the 10% that you can own and take responsibility for immediately trying to change or do better. What is the 10% you are spreading through the culture that may not necessarily be most effective? Think about the characteristics of high-functioning teams. What do we know? We know that these people tend to have high-quality relationships. Now, importantly, high-functioning teams don't always have relationships that extend outside of work. And we know from the research, in order to have a good workplace culture, you don't have to want to spend time with these people outside of work at all. But you do have to have high-quality working relationships. Leaders who are supportive as well as available when they say they're going to be available. Shared expectations of excellence. So again, what is expected? What do we define as excellence? And let me clearly communicate that. Let's make sure everybody understands what that means. And regular debriefs. Again, this is a constant conversation. Let's check in and evaluate, how are we doing? How is this going for us? I think, there's a balance between empathy and accountability, or compassion and accountability, that people sometimes struggle with. How can I treat this person with compassion, but also continue to hold them accountable? And there certainly is language to put around that. If you are expressing a concern to someone, statements like, I really care too much about you to let this slide. I need to talk to you about what happened or what I've been noticing. Or acknowledging, hey, you seem different. I've noticed you are less patient, or you don't seem as engaged or whatever, and that's not like you. Are you okay? So coming at it from a very compassionate standpoint. Or simply, again, holding folks accountable for, that's not the way we treat each other here. Those types of things, or that type of language is not going to be tolerated here. So as in any relationship, a marriage, a friendship, workplace culture is often most affected by small stuff done pretty consistently. So I want you to think about, when we talk about a compassionate workplace culture, that's what we're aiming for. There are certain characteristics of a compassionate culture. Think about how you would rate your workplace right now on a scale of 1 to 10. How frequently does this stuff happen? 1 being not at all and 10 being very often. The first characteristic is that colleagues ask and care about each other's work issues. So this is operating with some systemic awareness, right? I'm not just in a silo worried about what I have to do. I am able to look around and see, wow, he or she is slammed. I happen to have 20 minutes free. Let me see if I can pitch in and help him out. So understanding I am part of a team with a lot of working parts. Another characteristic is that colleagues ask and care about each other's non-work issues. So acknowledging we all have a life outside of this job. And a lot of harm here is done by acts of omission. So for example, someone takes off 3 days because a loved one dies. When they return to work, no one acknowledges it. No one says, hey, I'm so sorry to hear about what happened. Or, if anything, they're met with resentment that they've been gone for 3 days. That's painful. That's damaging to the culture. So it is, again, operating with an awareness that, we all have lives outside of this job that are inevitably going to affect the energy and the attitude that we are able to bring to this job. Colleagues are careful of each other's feelings and show compassion when things don't go well. So, noticing, gosh, you had terrible outcomes with that patient. Are you okay? In medicine, there is an epidemic of unresolved trauma. You get exposed to an inordinately large amount of traumatic events that most people don't go through in their lives, with patient deaths or bad outcomes or negative interactions with families. And it's worth feeling compassionate for each other when that happens and trying to help. Do you want to talk about it? Do you need to take a break? I heard you getting screamed at by that patient. You take a few minutes. So again, it's operating with an awareness. What's going on with the people around me? And then finally, just little acts of kindness, offering an ear when somebody wants to talk, or saying, hey, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee. Does anybody want anything? Or we all signed this birthday card for you. It's little stuff that can make a big difference as we shape a positive emotional culture. Another thing with building good culture is recognizing and staying connected to the meaning of what we are doing. Understanding coping with change, coping with crisis is not a concept. It is an ongoing conversation we need to be having. And the most resilient providers are the ones who stay connected to the meaning and the why of what they're doing. Why am I doing this? Particularly when it gets grueling. I have had several physician clients tell me one of the things that sustains me is that I regularly meet with a group of colleagues and we talk about the stuff that went well this week or this month or this quarter. The good outcomes, the positive moments, those moments where we felt aligned and just felt like, yes, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. It is worth taking time to pause and reflect and feel proud of those moments with each other. That is how we stay connected to the deeper meaning. So essentially, particularly in navigating something like COVID, which is such a long-term crisis, we're helping each other feel good about how we have come thus far. And that gives us encouragement to keep going. In reflecting on that, in reflecting on the good moments, it's very valuable to also think about as a team, to reflect as a team, when were we at our best? When did we feel like we really, really were performing? We were clicking along, our outcomes were good. What was going on during that time? Let's remember. One of the biggest resources for sustaining positive coping energy is recalling times that you performed well, that you performed with excellence and with joy. So thinking about what did that feel like? What role was everyone playing? But also, what were you doing? It's almost like if you could go to the balcony and look down on yourself during that time. What was your attitude? How were you taking care of yourself? How did you interact with other people? How did you support other people? So this is how you kind of create a roadmap for yourself as well as for your team about getting to those successful points in time. You've got to remember what it felt like. What were the things that were in place? So I encourage you to periodically pause along this journey and reflect as a team on how you've done up to this point. Honestly reflect on how you're feeling personally. And be honest about, am I participating in some of the disruptive stuff? What stuff am I participating in? And what's the good stuff that I have been doing? And how can I keep doing it? Just food for thought, a great resource. If you want to get a little more aware of what you are spreading at work, there's a great book called Intangibles by Dr. Amir Kasai from Trinity University. And he defines kind of 6 chunks of information to focus on when you think about what am I spreading at work? Am I spreading what I want to be spreading? So first of all, it's think about how you speak to people, okay? Some of this is common sense, but honestly, common sense goes out the window when we get stressed. So a reminder of this is never a bad idea. Obviously, it is a better idea to be inquisitive, to ask questions of people, to use we and us instead of statements of I need this from you. Tell me, what happened here. It's better to pose the question, how did we get to this point? Let me have your thoughts on how we got to this point. Asking how are you, but doing it authentically. A distracted "how are you" doesn't mean much. Ask "how are you" when you really have time to listen, and it's an authentic question. Use respectful language. So that's speaking. Another bucket of sort of stuff to think about in relation to what you're spreading is how approachable you are, how approachable you seem. Are you frowning all the time? Can you kind of authentically smile at folks, not in a fake way, in an authentic way when it feels appropriate? Is your door always closed? As a leader, particularly, a lot of leaders say they have an open door policy. It's okay for your door to sometimes be closed, but when it is open, be open. Be open to folks coming in and out, and then protect that time by closing the door when you need to. Being very engaged, being an active listener. There's a whole lot of distraction today. People are on their phone when they are listening to you. So thinking about, am I actually engaged with folks when they are talking to me? Am I on the phone as I walk down the hallway, or am I off the phone so that I can look people in the eye and say hello and have a brief interchange? Do I stay in my office all day, when I don't necessarily need to, or can I kind of round the units and have little engagements with folks? Particularly as a leader, that's how you can increase your sense of approachability. The third one is thinking about how you give credit to people when things go well. So obviously, it is nice to acknowledge anyone who goes above and beyond consistently. Simply saying, "You are going above and beyond. I really appreciate it." Try to catch people doing good things instead of catching them doing something wrong. Really try to see the good stuff and notice it, comment on it in the moment to reinforce it. Things like thank you notes go a long way. I can't tell you how many providers have told me over the years how impactful it was to receive a thank you note from a leader or a manager who recognized what they were doing day after day when they thought it was going unnoticed. Also thinking about how you give negative feedback. So obviously insults and things like that and emotionally unintelligent statements are not helpful. But it is okay, again, to be assertive and to tell people, when you act like this, it makes you look unprofessional. And I know you're not unprofessional. I know you don't want to be seen that way. Or, we don't tolerate that kind of thing here. Maybe this job isn't a good fit for you. That is also a conversation that it's okay to say. And there is an empathetic and compassionate way to do that. And then finally, thinking about how you react during a crisis or when mistakes are made. Do you get rude? Do you yell and scream? Do you look for someone to blame? It's obviously a much better idea to stay calm, to look for underlying reasons why the mistake may have happened. And then as a leader, to acknowledge if you had a role in the mistake, accept responsibility and saying, I really made the wrong call here and I'm going to own that. So those are the things that will have a profound effect on what you are spreading much more positive as opposed to negative stuff to create the positive emotional workplace we're looking for, that psychologically safe space. So I encourage you to think about, are there one or two behaviors you can think about implementing day to day, interactions that help you balance, again, that kindness and accountability balance? Are there certain things you can start doing to help with that? Right now, it is more important than ever to help each other. We need each other now, and we need psychologically safe workplaces. This is a hard time. We are in the long part of crisis management where folks start to get fatigued. And I hope this will be helpful in helping you guys think about how to continue to be heroes for each other in the workplace, create safe spaces for each other so that this positive culture can thrive. Thanks so much.